What's up, everybody? Welcome to Theory Thursday. During Hendrix week, I'm Jason, Players Club here in Burbank, California. Tonight we're going to be talking about the Hendrix chord. What the heck is the Hendrix chord for real? Well, it's an E7 chord with a raised ninth, and we're going to break down the whole theory, really understand what's going on, and I'll show you really how Hendrix used it, and a bunch of other rock guitar players and funk guitar players as well. So we should always start with a review of where we came from, right? So we've been building off of our triads and then our dominant chords and then the ninth chord, and that brings us to the sharp nine. So let's get into the theory as a quick review. Okay, so what we talked about, you can see on the chart right here, is, let me go back here. Sorry guys, want to make sure I have it down right. Stand by. Okay, cool. There we go. I was right. Yeah, what's up, Kendall? Okay, so we want to start by just doing a review of key signatures, what they mean, and then how the notes are formed, right? So a key signature, as we've discussed in the past, is a collection of notes. Think of it as a family of notes that live in the same house. So in this instance, it would be the key of E. Now we use the whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half process to figure out which family members live in that house of E. And when we do that, you would see that it's E, and then a whole step from E is F sharp, and then G sharp, and then A, and then B, and then so on and so on, okay? So from there we build a triad, and the triad is going to be the root, the major third, and the fifth of the chord. So if we're taking E as our example here, I'll zoom out so you can see me. E major being our chord here, we would have E as our root, we would have B as our fifth, and then we would have G sharp as our major third. So that would be our root, our third, and our fifth. Now there's also the octave E in there, right? So you have 1, 3, 5. Then we talked about last week that there's this concept of dominant sounds, or what we called seventh chords, and that is when you take the seventh note of the scale in its natural position, so that would be a half step below the E, and that in this situation would be D sharp, and we flatten it by 1/2 step, or on our guitar fretboard, 1 fret. So if D sharp was the ninth, or sorry, the seventh, the natural seventh of the key of E, then D would be the flat 7. So if we take a look at the guitar neck here, there I am at my E right here. That's the 5th fret of the A string. If I go down by half a tone, half a step, that's my natural 7. That is the D sharp. If I take that down yet again, now I'm at my D, which is my flat 7. So we said that when you have a root, a major third, a fifth, and a flat 7 all mixed together, we can call that an E dominant, also called E7, and you'd see that written in charts as E7. So the E7 sound was like this. Okay, let's try that together. So you take your third finger and you'd place it on the 7th fret of the A string. That's your E note. Then you take your middle finger and you'd place it on the 6th fret of the D string. That's your major third. Then you could take your pinky finger and place it on the 7th fret of the G. That's the D, which is the flat 7. So if we just hit those 3 notes, we would have E7. Now we go ahead and in this position also use our index finger on the 5th fret of the B string, and that's another version of an E, another octave of E. So when you strum that all together, you get E7, okay? Now, last week, we moved on with our discussion of extensions and talked about the ninth chord. So the ninth chord is when we play the 2 above the octave. So if E is 1 and E is also 8, because if we talk about our musical scale, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The first and the 8th tone are the same note, both E. We call that an octave. When we include the second tone of the scale, in this case it would be F sharp, right there. When we play that an octave higher, so we call it a 9. Now, it's important to note that to call this chord E9, we have to have the dominant note in there, the flat 7. So far, we have E, G sharp, which is your 3rd, D, which is your flat 7. Now, we don't have the B note in there. We could, that's the 5th. We could, but we also said before that you can omit the 5th if you wanted to. So you have your root, your 3rd, your flat 7, okay? And now we can add on the 2 above the octave, which is, in this case, F sharp. So that would mean we would revoice our chord, how we're gripping it, to play an E9. Let me show you. So you're going to play now with your middle finger, the 7th fret of the A string, with your index finger, the 6th fret of the D, so we're still at our root and our major 3rd. Our ring finger is going to go on the 7th fret of the G, that's your D, your flat 7, and now your pinky finger is going to go on the 7th fret of the B string, and that note right there is your F sharp. That's your 9, right? Your 2 above the octave. So when I strub those notes together, come on, play with me. You get E9. E9. Now, if we were not playing the D, here's just a fun fact for you. If we were not playing the D, we were just playing the major 3rd, the root, and the 5th, and then we added in the F sharp, we would call it E add 9. So sometimes we play that chord. It's very common, the C add 9. Well, that just simply means that you're playing the 2 above the octave, but the dominant tone, the 7th, is not in the mix. So we are adding the 9th, the 2 played above the octave. Okay, just a little sidebar there for you. However, in this situation, we are playing the D, so when we grip that chord and we strum away, we're playing E9. And it has a very funky tone to it. Go ahead and have some fun with it a little bit. Now, if you wanted to play the 5th, you could do it right there, and that's why I showed you before where you could bar it, because if you want to have that 5th in there, it gives it a real like chirpy, funky sound. Right, if you wanted to, it's all good. Okay, now that brings us to the E7 sharp 9. Now, we know that flat means 1 half step down, and the opposite of that, sharp, is 1 half step up. So if we have E7 sharp 9, that simply means that we're raising the 9th tone by a half a step. So if I go back into my chord, I have my root, I have my major 3rd, I have my flat 7, I have my 9 that I then raise up by a half step, and it's now played on the 8th fret of the B string, which means we would have to re-grip the chord because you obviously can't play the G and the B like that. You have to use 4 fingers. So here's how we play the E7 sharp 9. You keep your middle finger on the A string 7, your index finger on the D string 6, your ring finger, your third finger, on the G7, and now your pinky finger on the 8th fret of B. So that's your raised 9. And it sounds like that, right? It's wrong, but so right. So you have now root, 3rd, flat 7, sharp 9. So it's an E7 chord with a sharp 9. We call it E7 sharp 9, also known as the Hendrix chord. So when people refer to the Hendrix chord, that's what they're talking about. Okay, so basically it's a shape that's used on guitar that sounds just like that. And it just has a nice just grit to it. It has the blues tone, right? But then it has that extra just little something right there that is just not right, but right. So let's take a look at what makes it not right, but right. Okay, so that means we'd have to do the analysis on the note and how it relates to the chord. So if we're talking about this note right here, which is a G, right? It's your sharp 9, so it's a G. What is G in relation to E? Well, it's your minor 3rd. So if you count it up, that's just playing a regular minor scale right there. Your root on the A string 7, your 2nd on the 9th fret of the A string, and now your minor 3rd, which is your G, on the 10th fret of the A string. Go ahead and play those 3 notes. So I'm at 7th fret A, 9th fret A, and 10th fret A. Okay, so that's just the beginning of an E minor scale. So I have... Now that 3rd note, that minor 3rd, is the sharp 9. Here's the octave. In the E7 sharp 9. Now here's where it gets weird. We said that a dominant chord is a major chord with a flat 7, right? A dominant chord is a major chord with a flat 7. But we're playing now a minor 3rd. So what's happening is we're playing both the minor 3rd of E and the major 3rd of E in the same chord. Now listen to what happens when I play both of those notes at the same time. Better get some earplugs or something. That's going to sound really weird. That's it. Okay, so go ahead and try that. It's not supposed to sound good. Okay, so you take your, just for the experiment here, take your index finger, place it on the 6th fret of the D. Take your pinky finger and place it on the 8th fret, or your 3rd finger, the 8th fret of the B. And we're going to do the hybrid picking style here, which means we're going to pick one note and we're going to use our any of our other fingers. I use my middle finger to grab the other note at the same time. So you would do that, okay? So go ahead and hit the D string with your pick while you hit the B string with your middle finger at the same time, like that. Go ahead and try it. Does not sound good, right? It's not supposed to. You have 2 notes that are only a half step apart that really are just being very inharmonic, not working well together. But within the context of the chord, it makes sense, because if we take the flat 7, which is the D, and we play that with the G, that harmonically sounds good, right? Because it's a 5th. So that D is the 5th of G. It's like, oh, cool, that sounds nice. When we play the E and the G sharp together, that sounds nice. It sounds like a major chord. But when we play all 3 notes together, that doesn't work. quite. But when we bring back in the third finger, which is playing the D, which is the fifth of G, it just balances it out. Pretty magical, right? So let me break that down one more time so you totally understand. The raised ninth of this chord, the Hendrix chord, where your pinky finger is the note G. If you play through a G major scale, you'd find that the fifth of that scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the fifth note in that scale is D. Now we know that a fifth and a 1 are bonded. It's like father and mother in the house, right? They are in charge. They sound really good together. So we have both of those notes within this chord. By themselves, they sound great. Now we have two other notes that sound good together, a root and a major third. Then when we put that D in and create the seventh chord, it still works, right? It gives it that bluesy dominant sound. And then when we bring in that sharp 9, which is the minor third of the E, it has just the right amount of rub, but in the good way, because you're getting that, which is very fulfilling, and you're getting that, which is fulfilling. So you have this of like light and dark, this contrast, but when it's all blended together, it sounds really great. And it's like a rock and roll, like bluesy rock and roll chord, because what is bluesy rock and roll? It's edgy, and it's an edgy sounding chord. So when Hendrix would play this with a Marshall stack and being aggressive and just, well, being Hendrix, it sounds like this. Right? Just totally awesome. Now let's hear what it sounds like. Same kind of groove. If I just play the ninth chord, meaning I don't raise the ninth, I keep it at the F sharp. So 7, 6, 7, 7. Okay, here's the difference. All right, now that is very funk R&B, right? But it doesn't have just that little bit of something, just that little grit. So now let me give you the A, B. I'm gonna start off with the E9 chord, and then I'm gonna move into the E7 sharp 9, and you'll definitely be able to tell the difference, okay? So here we go. Okay, here comes the switch. Right? It just makes it come alive. It just sounds really, really good. So it's all in the context of how you're using it. If I were doing this chord in more of a jazzy way, doesn't sound right. You have to be aggressive with it and use it in a kind of funky, moving way for it to, well, find its way, find its place, right? And that's really the whole point of chord extensions, is they're meant to be placed in a scene, a musical scene, to evoke a certain emotion in the music. And the E7 sharp 9 chord is used most commonly with a slightly distorted tone, with playing a aggressive funk or an aggressive blues rock feel behind it, okay? And that's what's called the Hendrix chord. He used it most commonly in Purple Haze. That's most famous. Right? Fine. So that is what it is. And there was plenty of other situations where you would hear this chord. Another one would be Shining Star, Earth, Wind, and Fire. Right, that's cool. And there's plenty of Zeppelin tracks that use that, and plenty of other people that are using that. So was Hendrix the first guy to really use the E7 sharp 9 in a rock format? We'd have to do our research. My guess would be no. He was probably the most popular guy to do that. But for whatever reason, it got labeled the Hendrix chord. But really what it is just E7 sharp 9. So a ninth chord with the ninth note raised up a half step. So hopefully that sheds a little light on what the Hendrix chord is and why you would use it, how you would use it, and your theory knowledge is a little bit better for it. So that's going to wrap up Hendrix week. Next week, maybe we'll do another theme. Maybe we'll find another player. We'll see how it goes. But I'll think about it over the weekend and get back to you. If you guys have any suggestions on what kind of themed week you'd like to do, I'm totally hip to doing it. Just shoot me an email or leave me something in the chat, and we'll kind of go from there. So I got a question here real quick. Does anyone ask you? Oh wait, did you like playing certain keys or you do as Hendrix licks? Did Hendrix like to play in certain keys? I don't know, to be quite honest with you. You know, like there seems to be a lot of E. So why would he play an E or E flat with the guitar tuned down? Probably to use the open strings, right? To be able to use those open notes. And last night we did those little, right, those things. You can't really do that in certain keys, like F sharp. So he probably chose keys that, number one, fit his voice. That's probably the most common reason. And number two, that he could do guitar tricks on. But to me, Joel, it really all stems back to the blues, right? Blues is usually an E or an A, and that's kind of what Hendrix is doing as well. But he did have a lot of flat tunings, but because the guitar was tuned down, most likely to fit his voice. Yep, so hopefully I answered that. All right, so let's see here. Clapton next week. Okay, that could be... I might like that vibe. I might like that vibe. I've been listening to a lot of Clapton lately, so I think you're going to be on that one, Doc. So okay, if anybody else has any requests, I'll be taking them through email, text message, or of course you can leave it in the chat here and I'll check it out later on. We could do some theme weeks for the next several weeks, whatever you guys like, but that'll mean that we do a song on Monday. We do a technique to the player on Tuesday. We do a technique, or we do a jam on Wednesday in that player's style, and then I'll find some kind of theory thing that they did and explain it to you this way. So anyway, hopefully that this was helpful. Thanks for hanging out, guys, with Hendrix this week. It was really fun to do. So thanks, Joel. Everybody give Joel a thumbs up for initiating this idea. Had a great time. And just a couple other real quick notes. I'll be sending out the Players Club videos, your jam videos, hopefully by the end of next week. All the pro musicians have them right now, and they're kind of going through those tunes as we speak. And I'm hoping that they'll be done by mid next week, so you'll be able to start your rehearsals. And if you are not in the Players Club and you're out there and you're watching this and you want a little bit more information on that, just shoot me a message on the chat here, and then I'll connect with you. So you can just put your email or I'll put mine up there and you can connect with me that way. So thanks a lot, guys. You guys have a safe weekend, and I'll see you soon.